What's up, guys? Welcome back to the THPStrength podcast. We have been on a little bit of a hiatus, as per usual. These episodes come out randomly. We never know when they're going to be. Isaiah and I's life is always fluctuating up and down, and it makes it hard to predict when we're going to be able to do them. Isaiah, give us a little bit of an up. Actually, before we do that, let's introduce Joe, and then we'll get a little bit of an update on what everyone's doing. So, Joe, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why we asked you to be on the podcast, specifically about today's training.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Well, my name's Joe Ellis. I'm a postcollegiate hammer and weight thrower, which are track and field events from the University of Michigan. I train postcollegiately for Great Britain. And so I'll be gearing up, hopefully, to make the world champs in Budapest this year, and then the Olympics after that. And then, then it'll be a reevaluation time after that if I want to go in a different athletic direction or, get a real person job. So that's where we're at right now.
That is a fantastic description. And a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to make it in postcollegiate track. And I guess we'll get into this later, but one of the things is like funding, like how do you actually afford to do it? And that'll be another question I'll leave. Isaiah, give your quick update on what you're doing right now, what life has been like in the last, I don't even know, since the last podcast, 2 months.
Yeah. So as you guys have seen, we've been on a hiatus from the podcast and then also my YouTube channel. The reason being is because I just moved cross country from California to Florida, and I had a baby in that same time span. So been a huge transitionary period, but we're finally starting to settle down and that type of thing. So hopefully that will mean more consistent content from us. And yeah, still training through this whole thing though.
Yeah, fantastic. So updates with me. I was visiting San Francisco and then I came back here, and I've been here for a week or so. We had the holidays and I was traveling home for that, and then again back here. So as you guys know, I've been training at UMD, and recently kind of had a little bit of a labrum flare up in my hip, not your shoulder. There's 2 of them. It actually feels way better than I thought. I thought at first it was going to be like way longer progression. I think it's going to be a pretty short injury. I think I could lift today if I needed to, which is pretty great. And I haven't told you this, Isaiah, but I'm going to be going back to San Francisco to stay with my girlfriend and look at apartments in the Bay Area. So Isaiah, I just news to you. You leave California, I moved to California. If I could live somewhere else, I would, but I am choosing to do this because I think in terms of being an adult, 29, it's like I'm gonna be 30. Like I'm not trying to, just date haphazardly or whatever. And it just makes sense. Like my brother is who I've been staying with, and he just had a baby as well. So, it doesn't really make sense for me to blow up their spot. And, I need to figure out a living situation, and I don't want to go back to my parents, obviously. So
it's funny you say being 29, about to hit 30 and all that stuff. And then Joe, what you said earlier, getting a quote unquote real person job. I was having a dunk session yesterday with my friend Austin, and we were just doing that. And for background, I used to live here in Florida, and Austin was my roommate. And from age 20 to 23, we were just messing around, play basketball all the time, have dunk sessions. And we were having the session, and we were just joking around. And I remember just being yo, I feel like a little kid. I've been doing the same thing the last 5 years. This is my job, is just jumping and dunking and stuff like that. And then I was like, maybe I should be an adult. And I was like, nah, I'll
later.
Just wait as long as possible.
Yeah, but I think doing this type of stuff is what keeps you young for as long as possible.
So I shouldn't move. I should just keep living.
You shouldn't move. Just live in your brother's basement and keep dunking every day, and you'll be fine.
I love it. All right, well, that's the update. We will get into the podcast. Specifically, the reason why I wanted to bring Joe on the podcast is because I saw a video of him power cleaning. I think it was 415 or something, or maybe 395 for reps. I don't know. Joe,
that was 405. It was 405.
Yeah, 405. Was it a single or is it a triple?
So I uploaded 2 pretty recently. One that went viral. You don't ask for these things to go viral. The internet algorithm just takes it, and then all of a sudden you got a million people being like, this is the worst technique I've ever seen, young man. You know, and then it's like you do a little, and you know, everyone in whatever athletic space is, you know, I love it. I just want people to be lifting. But then you look at, this guy that comments being like, listen, I have a degree, and he's deadlifting less than you can clean, and you're just like, all right, brother, do you?
It's
but
funny.
regardless, that particular lift, because I'm working with a company called GymAware that actually
dude, they're awesome.
It's a real blessing. They actually make these devices that measure your bar speed. And so as a part of our agreement, I upload a video of me lifting a week. I've done this for about 12, 13 weeks now. And then this last one, just, 500,000 views, a lot of random people making their space known. And most of them are really positive. But yeah, this particular video was me doing high box power cleans for a triple at 405 pounds. So, that was an enormous PR for me. And so I felt it should probably go up there. And because I was proud of it. And then 2 weeks ago, I also posted a video of me doing 430 pounds for a single on just a regular hang power clean. And then I got really close on 455 pounds. I got, right here, and then just said, nope, and went right back down. But yeah, so those were the videos that I think after those went out there, John, you reached out to me and I was like, oh man, this is pretty cool.
No, I mean, I think a lot of, I've worked in track for quite a bit of time, and you probably don't know anything about me. Basically, I worked with a guy named Mike Young, who was the biomechanist for the US team for shot put. And so I was around, I actually got to go to the 2016 trials, Olympic trials for the US, and sit in the ring while Joe Kovacs and, Ben Krauser. Ryan Krauser. I'm away from track. So this is like 8 years ago now. But at the time I was like very, very into track. But yeah, so Joe was there, Ryan Krauser, the guy from Penn State. So I'm getting to see all of these just monsters, just, freak of freaks. They come to the weight room, and I was at Altus for a while. So John Godina talked about Joe and how strong he was and stuff like that. And so I was kind of accustomed to how freaky throwers were. And then I worked at an OTC for weightlifting. So I was around clean and jerk and snatch at a pretty high level. And, I understand the discrepancies between throwers and weightlifters, and I'm able to kind of parse out how freaky certain things are. And so when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, this guy is squatting as much as world-class weightlifters or more, and hang power cleaning in his hand, not even catching it on his shoulders, 400 plus pounds. And I was like, that is wild. I was and then I saw you talk about velocity-based training, and I was like, oh, Annie knows about VBT. So many, it's one of the things that a lot of people understand but don't use really well. And I was reading your post and I was like, oh, he's actually using this to guide his entire program right now. I'm super curious on how you've been doing that. I think it's kind of funny because Isaiah, his training, we were talking about it before the podcast. I was like, his training is not that dissimilar to shot putters or football players. It's get strong as shit, get powerful as shit, but the difference is their weight needs to stay very, very low. So you can't just pack on muscle or whatever else. But we follow the force velocity curve, and we go from slower movements to faster movements as you get to higher velocity parts of the year. And I'm guessing hammer throw is even more, and weight throw is way faster velocities than shot and disc probably, in terms of your actual rotational speed. Is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah. So the hammer is one of the more kind of biomechanically bizarre events, because it requires you to be patient and aggressive at the same time. And so for those of you that don't know, the hammer throw, you spin around 4 times, increasing speed every time. And you your arms get longer as they get stretched by the ball, velocity increases, all the forces compound. I've heard it once said that in the 4th spin of an Olympic level hammer thrower, their body is under almost 700 pounds of force. And the ball at its release is going, I think this guy was a Russian, so he was using kilometers per hour, but it was 70 kilometers per hour at release. So like this ball, by the way,
55 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah, it's got to be like 50 miles an hour. And, these are throws going 260 feet, so we're talking like 2/3 across a football field, at 16 pounds. And
how heavy is the hammer?
So it's 16 pounds. And, as it's one of these things that seems very heavy. And then you get into college and all of a sudden, as a part of the training, Isaiah, you'll throw heavier implements. So, I'll throw a 16-pound, but I'll also throw a 20-pound and a 25-pound. And then when I'm training the indoor event, the 35-pound weight throw, which, is specifically done indoors. So it doesn't go as far, and they're able to, throw it into like large barns, that kind of thing. That event, I'll throw up to a 56-pound implement, and I can throw that around 50 feet. And you do it the same way. You do the 4 spins, and it's absolutely bizarre, but it's super fun. It's like, because in any event, like, and I know you guys are very into jumping and explosive ability, and so there's got to be like this passion to try and defeat gravity. That's the way I always think about it. It's like, like everything you always heard, what comes off must come back down, right? So, that's much the same way with throwing. It's like there's this joy that comes in trying to throw something farther and watching as it stays in the air just a millisecond longer, goes just a foot farther. So it's just this kind of like passion that drives you to, really beat gravity. Say, sorry, Isaac Newton, you're wrong, and then, that's just part of the fun for me, I guess, nerding out a little bit.
That's probably pretty relatable for you.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's the same, like it's the same sensation. I mean, I think for like whether it's jumping or even like lifting weights is the same thing. Like you're just trying to
move some heavy ass weight
to the weight.
Yeah,
I think what reminds me of like hammer is long drive. Like it's like the same sensation of just crushing a ball into oblivion. It's like, how far can I throw this heavy ass thing? I don't know, but let's figure it out. Like, what's the most and it's interesting too, because it's like hammer is probably the most efficient way to throw a heavy object very far. Like you can't throw a heavier implement further if you throw it like a disc or a javelin or a shot put. Like if you want to throw a heavy object really, really far, is there a more efficient way than the way that hammer throwers throw it? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
difficult to say, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's that's a good point. That's an interesting thing. Obviously, if you're going to throw something light very far, throwing like a baseball, a javelin, a football, that's like a whiplash of the shoulder, elbow, chain reaction. But like if you're throwing something heavy, it's like the more time you have to accelerate, the farther it's probably going to go.
So I have a lot of questions, and I'm going to start firing them away. Isaiah, if you have questions, you can just like feel free to jump in here. First off, I love GymAware. I know that there's a couple other like VBT devices. I've used the ones with like gyroscopes inside of them. So Push has an accelerometer and a gyroscope in it that tells the direction and it tells how fast it's moving. I didn't like Push because it wasn't reliable. Every time that you do a rep, you get the same rep with a lot of variability between them. The one on a string, anytime it's on a string or a coil, I've noticed it's really, really good. I think GymAware is a string coil like mechanism, right? Or no?
Historically, they have what they really built their brand on is accuracy, and yes, it's got a spool in there, so it'll like it'll retract and then come back down, and it's like those are easily the most accurate. But the one I've been using and the one they've asked me to work with them with is their new Flex device, which is designed to be a lot more affordable, and it uses like laser and light to bounce from a reflective mat at like hundreds of times in like a second over the course of a lift, so that it can triangulate and tell you where the bar is and thus calculate speed. So it's like it's of course not quite as accurate as their spool device, but it's a sixth of the price. And so you think about that, where it's like on the squats, it's in my opinion just as accurate, and so that's primarily what I use it for, and it's just been really great.
Do you use it for cleans at all, or?
I use the spooling device for cleans, and now this isn't me trying to be egotistical here, but when I clean at a very high velocity, and frankly, it's too quick for this device to beam it up to pick up my numbers. But Like, because when I
What
start
velocities
out,
are you hitting in like hang cleans for peak and average?
so like it's on weight, right? So
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I always start at the same and I work up. It's just how it goes. So, but I use
Yeah,
gym wear
actually,
and I
talk
go.
about that because that's super important, and a lot of people don't understand why it's important to keep the weight exactly the same as you build up using BBT.
Yeah,
So, like, my opinion is the reason you do that is because if you keep changing the weight, you don't know what your readiness is. So, is that how you use it as well?
exactly. It's really like this. So basically, if you're in a velocity based training mindset, it's the numbers don't matter as far as the weight. The weight doesn't matter. The weight is separate. It's an effect. It's an effect based on your speed. So, I am looking at the numbers, and that's all I care about as far as the meters per second, not the pounds on the barbell. So, I'll start off and I'll put on 135, and that's my base. But the number I'm looking at is the velocity, and my best speed on that is I've moved it at 3.7 meters per second.
On
So
a clean.
on a clean pull, on a clean. So I can let me see. At the end of this, I'll send you guys some videos of me moving because I recorded my last workout because I've been working on some technical changes with one of the coaches at Michigan. But
Right.
and so my best ever is I think like 3.68, 3.7 on
With
135. So
that's
like
so fast. For perspective, just so that's your peak force, right? That's not our peak
that's
peak velocity.
I never do mean for cleans. I always do mean for squats.
Okay, this is an important detail. If you're listening to this and you want to use VBT, use average or mean if you're doing deadlift, squat, bench, basically, correct? And then basically any of the powerlifting movements, which ironically are not that powerful unless you're using VBT. And if you're doing Olympic lifting movements, make sure you use peak velocity because you're focused on not how slow the first pull. Like the first pull is going to slow down the whole average and it'll just throw everything off. So you're really just looking at peak because we care about the peak bar speed, and changes in the velocity of the bar throughout that movement is part of the lift. So that's why you're looking at it. And yeah, just take a mental note of that, listeners, because it is super important. Anyways, go ahead with what you were saying. Last point of perspective, I move 135 peak bar speed at about 2.5. So for people listening, Joe is moving it like almost 50 to 60% faster, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So go on with what you were saying.
Of course, yeah, and obviously a caveat here. It's like I have molded my body to have as much peak explosive ability as I can, and at the cost of almost no endurance. So it's like I will sprint, but I will do incredibly short distances and not a lot of reps. But like on the flip side of that, it's like power, explosive ability, everything. That's the
exactly the same as us.
So yeah.
You should ask Isaiah about jogging for 5 minutes, how he feels about it.
Yeah, like
I hate anything endurance.
So and also the way that I clean and the way that I snatch isn't like an Olympic weightlifters, because their goal is to complete the lift, complete the movement, and get 3 good lights and then move on heavier weights. My goal is to use that weight to move as fast as I possibly can. So when I do 135, like I have to pull it back down to my shoulders at the end of that pull. So what it looks like is I'm here and I go like this because I pull it above my chin and then I have to bring it back down because I'm focused on as much acceleration as I can. And as I put on weight, it starts to resemble more of what like people are used to watching in a lift because I can't pull it quite that high. So then I'll go 135. I'll move it about 3.6. And if I move it like 3.3, that tells me information. That tells me I'm not feeling as explosive. I'm not moving as well. And thus my weights aren't going to go as heavy. But say I'm moving it at 3.6, I'll move on 225. And my best ever is about 3.11, 3.11. And that's like my bread and butter. Like 225 is right around the weight in which I get the most watts produced. For example, like
for peak wattage, like you'll have your highest outputs.
Exactly. 225 is my highest wattage. It's where it's kind of like now my watts don't decrease significantly, but like 225 is historically, that's the number. And for those of you at home, I'll produce around 85 to 9,000 watts on the lifts. And for perspective, I've seen a lot of like like collegiate people who use gym wear. I've seen like force velocity profiles on some NFL guys. Right around 6,000 watts is considered pretty peak. And so like 9,000 watts is pretty absurd. You're not going to get a lot of people able to produce that. But again, like that's my game.
For perspective, as a jumper, right? We want to, this is for viewers and also Joe, for you. I produce around, I think the peak power I've ever produced is maybe 37 to 4K, and that's in a power. I think it was in a snatch. I don't even think it was in a clean. And for me, that was around 50% of my max as well. Like that tends to be, because that's a little more than 50% of yours, right?
Yeah, just about.
And it's probably different for everyone. Like, is the goal to push up the weight where you're hitting that peak power, or do you not even care? Is it just like, just hit peak power? Like, would you rather hit your peak wattage at 135 if you could? It's probably not possible because you'd literally throw the bar through the ceiling, but
exactly. It's kind of like, as far as peak power, yeah, like usually it'll peak in the middle of the workout, right around 225 or 275 on any given day. But that doesn't mean you're not doing good work heavier than that, because there's just different things you're focusing on.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
I have a question.
I guess what I'm wondering is like, what did you say, Isaiah?
No,
I'm just talking. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a second behind, so I'm like,
no, you're good. You're good. So, when on a day where you're gonna like PR your hang clean or your power clean,
Isaiah, I think. Oh, never mind. It looked like
am I good
for a second? Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. So on a day where you're gonna go for like a PR on hang clean or power clean, do you use the bar speed as a sign that you're gonna go for it? Like, let's say the velocity is like at your best, are you gonna try to like PR your clean? And then if, let's say you were planning on PR in the power clean, but the velocity isn't looking like the best, do you like just scrap it and like not
Isaiah,
go for it?
You there? Can you hear him, Joe?
Yeah, well, it's I'm a pretty good lip reader, and so I knew what he was saying. Cause like I have like hearing loss, so like I kind of combine it. So like I was like, oh yeah. If on a day I'm like following completely along, and then I'm like, oh wait, he's not actually speaking.
I'm like, awesome. Did you get any of that? And Joe's like, I got all of it. I just read his lips. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Isaiah, you might want to take your AirPods out. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that they might be dying maybe or something. I'm not sure. Or it could be your internet, maybe.
This is my internet. I'm gonna go to the living room.
Yeah. You can leave the AirPods in then. All right, go ahead, Joe, with what you were gonna say. I think what he said was, would you actually plan on lifting or do you not? I don't know what you actually asked. Joe read your lips. I didn't.
Okay, yeah. Well then, for our viewers, would you mind repeating your question?
Yeah. Okay. You guys, am I like good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was asking, on a day where you're planning on hitting like a power clean or a hang clean PR, do you use the bar speed to decide if you're going to go for it? So like, let's say hypothetically you're going to go for it, like you go into the session trying to PR, but then when you're warming up, your bar speed isn't at its best. Do you just scrap the plan and not go for the PR? And then the opposite applies too. Like, let's say you go in and your bar speed is at its best ever, or you decide, oh, I'm gonna try to PR my clean. And
so,
just a random aside too. The reason I ask is I was trying to power clean 300 for literally all of last year, and then the day that I finally PR'd it, when I had 225 on the bar, I was able to catch it like standing straight up. So it was like the bar speed was at its best ever. And ever since that day, I use 225 as a test. I'm like, okay, if I'm catching it straight up, that means the bar speed's really good. Like I could probably get close to 300. So I'm just really curious if you use that to decide what you're going to do for the day.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I think it comes down to intent. So it's like weightlifting isn't my primary objective. My primary objective is to be a good thrower and to throw farther, make the Olympics. So I am oftentimes limited in like how heavy or I allow myself to go. Like for example, this past fall is the time when I get to dedicate myself most strongly to weightlifting because there's no competitions. And it's the time where I get the most growth. Historically, I do about a 12 to 14 week program in the fall, and I ended at 12 to 14 weeks and I max. And then what I do is I maintain that strength for the year. And then, so it's like,
Ooh.
for example, like I finished and I hit, 430 in the hang powers. I hit 405 for a triple in the box powers, and those were PRs. On those days, I have them marked on my calendar as max day. So like, this isn't something where I walk into the gym and I'm like, I feel really good. These are like the days where I'm max. So it's like, the couple weeks prior, I'm thinking about it, and like that intent increases energy. On the box clean day, for example, I did set 2 speed PRs. I hit 315 for, I want to say, 2.4 meters per second on the box clean, and my previous best had been 2.3. Now, what that tells you is that tells you you're in your best shape. That tells you you're in your best shape, because the thing about GymAware is it remembers your lifetime best speed. So this is from a guy who's been using this software for 7 years. And when you move a weight faster than you've ever moved it before, like that tells you you are in your currently physically in this particular moment the most athletic and powerful you've ever been on this particular exercise. And what that does, that fills you with an immeasurable confidence, because you guys are athletes. If you might think, man, I'm feeling good. Something feels nice. Maybe I got a good night's sleep. Maybe I got a good meal. I'm feeling good. But then you go and you start performing and you're like, I'm not doing well. What's going on? Well, like, GymAware takes away all of the feelings. It tells you exactly in scientific terms how you are actually doing compared to previous versions of yourself. So for box power cleans, right, I've probably attempted 315 before that day 50, 60 times in my life. And out of all those 50, 60 times, this day I am the fastest, most explosion version. So
yours right perfectly coincided. Like, you were like, it's max day. I come in, my max is good. You're good to go. Like, you follow the plan regardless. You're like, even if you were a little bit slow on it, you still would have maxed out. Like, you would have just followed the plan. Okay. So that's also interesting, because like with Isaiah, I'll be like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. But if you feel good, like as his coach, I'll tell him, if you feel good and you want to max, like, where he'll text me, hey, I feel really good. Should I max? And I'm like, I'll usually run, a very brief, complex algorithm, multivariate algorithm in my brain to say, yes, you can do this because this is how far your competition is. This is what the goal of the cycle is. This is what we're trying to do. And, here are the variables, your back, your knee, your foot, whatever. Like, okay, fine, go for it. CNS. And then he's like, all right, cool, I'm going to do it. And then he does it. And then it's like, oh, cool, I got a max, or sometimes he doesn't. But there's definitely days where he comes in, and we usually max out once every 4 weeks. We do a lot of strength, a lot of power work as well. We train like track and field athletes, very, 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 very similar to what you do probably. And so he'll come in and he'll be like, I kind of feel shitty. It's a deload week, but I feel shitty. And I'm like, all right, well, like, do you want to do it or not? And he's like, I don't know. We'll see how the build-ups go. And so it's interesting because, like you said, the GymAware adds a level of objectivity. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about whether you caught the weight perfectly. It doesn't care about anything. All it is saying, here's the number, take it or leave it. Where, and for you, it's really interesting because your cycles, when you max, perfectly coincide with your peak bar speeds at 225, 315, etc. Right? Like, going into your max day, you're actually hitting those peak bar speeds. Whereas for Isaiah, sometimes, honestly, that doesn't happen. Maybe it's shitty training on my end, maybe not. It's nice that you're able to fully predict that, like, or that it does coincide perfectly. I think
what I find really interesting, I want to like dig into it a little more, is you said you train 12 to 14 weeks, basically to PR, or like to get stronger. And then what do you do the rest of the 9 months of the year? Like, how is the training looking like compared to those 3 months?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, because, yeah, again, for my event, like, again, weightlifting isn't the goal. It's like you guys, it's a tool to use. So that doesn't mean I'm not setting speed PRs. It just means I'm not setting weight PRs. So for example, I set these number targets. Like, I wanted to hit 455 in the hang clean, and next year I want to do like 475, or I want to do 495, something like that as a target to keep you focused and driving. And then I'll use that number and that like mentality, and I'll do percentages for the rest of the year. So for example, like, I hit 430 on a hang, I want to attempt over 405 for a triple for the rest of the year. But last year I didn't attempt over 65 for a triple for the rest of the year. But then, last year my 3-rep PR was 405. So it's like, it kind of, that's how I do it.
Yeah, like you're working off a higher max for the rest of the year. So you're still doing those lifts, you're still trying to hit speed PRs. You still do your warm up exactly the same way. You go 130. If you have hang powers or whatever, you would go 135, 225, 315, because now that's 80% of your max compared to what it, previously it was like 85 or something like that. So you're hitting that, you'll touch that weight and you have more opportunities to hit peak bar speeds. So you still follow like and I'll ask you this, when you do your periodization, obviously you go general specific, you go from slower velocities to more specific velocities, you go from probably higher volumes to lower volumes and higher intensities. I'm assuming these are all true. That's correct for your training?
Yeah, definitely as the season progresses, the reps drop, but the intensity stays the same.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You can never drop the intensity. That's what people often forget when they try to peak for major competitions. It's like, sure, you may not be doing 100% of your max, but you are lifting 75% of your max as aggressively as possible.
Yeah. And I think that's something like I want to kind of touch on for viewers. What Joe's talking about, and when he says intent is the whole reason why you use velocity-based training. When you're looking at, oh, did I lift the weight or not? It doesn't matter as much because you care about how much power your legs are putting, into the ground or whatever else, or how much force you're putting into the ground. So when you're looking at intent, it's I'm going to move every weight as fast as possible. Like Louis Simmons with his like dynamic approach or whatever back in the day, pretty much the same thing, right? You have your dynamic day, move it or even if it's heavy as shit, try to move it as fast as possible. Reason being is your nervous system doesn't discriminate by the weight. If you put an EMG unit on your, on your arm EMG unit on your arm or your leg or whatever you're doing, if your intent is maximum, you're going to get huge neural loads or outputs, which is exactly the same thing that happens when you throw or you jump or anything else, and you have those huge outputs. So your nervous system doesn't care whether the weight's 135 or 225. It does in the sense that it is a means for you to deliver more power output. Like Joe said, he hits his peak wattages of 9,000 at 225, right? Around there. So it's a means for him to get that physiological adaptation. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, why does any of this matter? That's why it matters, because it is inherently training the underlying qualities that will help you be a more powerful, more explosive athlete. And so, like you said, intensity doesn't fall off. Why doesn't intensity fall off? Because as soon as you drop intensity, you are unsharpening something that you've been sharpening all year. You're dulling the blade and you want to stay as sharp as possible. And when you drop volume and you keep intensity high, you keep the blade sharp, but you're able to freshen up and swing the knife faster. So if you, and that's why it's what he's saying is really important. And I don't know if many people understand that training concept, but it is very, very, very important. And it follows, I don't know if you know Indigo Mujica, he's like the taper researcher. And that's like all of his research is like keep intensity super high, drop volume by a lot. And I'm assuming that's how you generally will taper and deload.
I mean, that's it exactly. It's like the whole thing about gymwear and velocity-based training. I keep using gymwear as a substitute for VBT. Yeah. Like you can use whatever VBT measuring device you want. Yeah. Like it's just like, there's a lot of tools out there. It's just that's the one I've grown up with.
Dude, gymwear is gonna love this podcast. They're gonna be like, oh, this is the best.
I know. It's like that's just how it goes. And then another thing too, like just to put out there, like I don't have a degree in any of this. This is purely experience, and then listening to people smarter than me. Generally, Dr. Brian Mann. I don't know if you know that name.
Yep, Dr. Brian Mann, brilliant human being.
He's the guru, and he has a background in throwing, and he's like, what he says, I listen to, and I think he's great. I think you guys should look him up. But in regard to intensity, it's like, say you do feel terrible, you had a bad night's sleep. Academically, it's proven like if you have a stressful academic week and you're in school, and your numbers are not going to be as nice on the VBT device. But what you're going to want to do is try as hard as you physically can while feeling bad, because that's what's going to benefit you more. Like, don't go as high in weight, but move it as aggressively as you can. Like the reason why, I posted that fail of mine at 455-pound hang clean is because even though 430 I caught, I produced over 200 more watts failing at 455 than I did succeeding at 430. Yeah. So it's like, as far as me and what I benefit from, I benefited from attempting 455 because I was able to produce more power. And the reason I catch is primarily like when I talk about catching, I talk about catching the weight. The reason I don't just pull and stop is because of intensity and intent, and those things go hand in hand. It's like you could theoretically pull 550 pounds and like pull it to your belly button maybe, but what happens is when you try to catch a weight, it's physiological. It's this fear factor that's in there. It's like you're having to catch this weight, you're having to make a statement, and if you miss, you have to drop it and fail. But if you're just doing a pull, there's no fear there, because there's no instance in which you're going to get buried by this weight. You're just pulling it and dropping it. That's why if you look at pulls, in my opinion, oftentimes the velocities are down and the power is way down as opposed to a clean. So
that is one of the most interesting points I've ever heard. And it's good to know.
Yeah, that is a really cool take.
Because so many people are like, oh, I'll just do clean pulls. I'll just do high pulls. There's no reason for me to catch. And I'm always like, you should work on this, at least in your warm-ups. They're like, it hurts my wrist. I'm like, stretch your wrist. And I'm like, work on your technique. And they're like, why? And I'm like, yeah. And it's really that the answer is there. You can't. Your intent's going to be lower. Your power output's going to be lower. Your adaptation's going to be worse. Do the catch. And people are like, well, do you want to get better or not? Like,
yeah. What's crazy about that is I've had so many workouts that are I feel like my clean pull workouts compared to my power clean, my clean pull workouts are always so much more like lower effort, and it's because it's like subconsciously I know I can like half-ass it more, if that makes sense.
You're going to be just fine. You're not going to get hurt by this weight. If it's not a great pull, it's just going to go back down, and then nobody's hurt by this.
Yeah.
But if you fail a catch, you might get hurt. You might be in a bad position, and it's this extra like, oh my goodness, oh shit, I'm in danger. Like I have to try so much harder, like an effort you tap into that you might not realize that you have until you have to tap in.
And what's interesting too is like you don't know that unless you've used GymAware for 7 years. Like for you, you're like, I know because I've used GymAware for 7 years that if I don't do the catch, my power outputs aren't going to be as high. And for me, I intuitively kind of know that, but it's like I didn't have the data to back it up, and it's good to know that it's like, hey, here's a case study. This guy has done this. I don't know if Brian Mann's shown that in his research, but that's really insightful. And then the other thing is in terms of like the hex bar jump and stuff like that. Do you use that lift at all? Do you not use it? And how do you feel about that? Do you get like what's your point of view on it? Because there's a guy
real quick. I'm gonna cut you off.
Loves it. Yeah, go ahead. Cut me off.
We have a minute and a half left. Do you want to end this one and then just start a new one? And then I can just combine them?
We splice it together. Yeah. Let's do that right now.
Great. Yeah, you got to game the system, boys.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we were talking about, the clean, intense higher, power output's higher. It's all about whether you feel shitty or not. You want to get the training stimulus. You want to get the benefit of that. Just move the weight as fast as possible, even if you're not going to hit your best. That's the whole purpose of it. We wanted to apply to the sport. So then I said, hey, Joe, how do you feel about hex bar jumps? And so we have a guy in our field. His name's Paul Fabritz. Another guy, Max Schmarzo. You probably heard of Max. String. I don't remember what his Instagram handle is. We're super bright guys. They tend to be advocates of not doing ollies. I'm an advocate of doing ollies. I love them. I've had a lot of success with them. I've taught people how to do them in a day or two tops. Just taught my athlete Richard Tan. Never done them before in his life. Another athlete, Jimmy Ho, taught him. Another athlete, a good friend of ours, Zero, taught him how to do it. Zero bounce. And they all picked it up within a day of me teaching them how to do power cleans. Other than the rack position, in which case I just say, build your way up, go really light, work your way into a better rack position. You don't even rack the bar, right? You just hold it in your hand. So that's even
it's like it is resting, but it's a very vertical rack. It's like it is resting on the weight pushes me back and it's resting, but it's not a front squat rack position. It's just here and then back down.
Does it hurt your wrist when you get
It really doesn't, and it's because I stick my traps forward, and so exactly. So it's resting here, and then like it's just right here, and then it comes back down, and that's just because I do lots and lots of reps, and so that's just a little more fatigue, and it's just a more natural position for me biomechanically.
Okay, I like that. That's we get into like the full, but if you're on the shoulder, it's a rep. You know what I mean?
If you're using straps, you cannot easily get to that position. So I always use straps.
I was gonna say, so you always use straps. Does that scare the shit out of you if you miss and fall backwards and break your wrist? Is that ever a fear of yours?
No, and it's because I always fail forward. Like it's just something you teach yourself how to do. But it's one of these things. Like if you guys check out my 455 miss, like what happens is I get here and then it flops back forward. And part of that is because I always keep a little bit of weight forward on my torso. And as a result, I miss some weights because I'm not in an optimum position. But at the end of the day, safety first, baby. It's like, don't get hurt doing this. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. Like, don't get hurt doing it.
Right. And that's the argument a lot of people make is like, oh, they're not safe. And I'm like, oh, they're not safe if you don't know what you're doing and you just decide to max out the first day. But like,
and the fear adds velocity anyways.
Yeah. So how great do you want to be? How great do you want to be? You want to be great or not?
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Yeah.
I remember, John, do you remember when I fell on my back?
Yeah.
On the tower clean?
It was bad. Isaiah caught a bar. I think he went into a full, right? Or did you just kick you backwards?
It just kicked me backwards. Yeah.
And Isaiah like dumped the bar out in front of him, fell backwards on a barbell, and like it wouldn't have been a bad miss, but we were training in someone's backyard and they had a terrible, like, it was just terribly organized, and there was a Smith machine right behind me. So I failed a power clean, and technically I bailed okay. Like I threw the bar in front of me and stuff.
That's how you're supposed to do it, yeah.
But the Smith machine was behind me, and I fell on the Smith machine, and then the bar came on top, and I almost got impaled by the Smith machine behind me.
I shouldn't laugh, but it is.
It's funny because I didn't get hurt.
It's funny because you're not hurt, and it's oh my god, you okay? You're okay?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's how it is.
Exactly.
But that stuff's pretty freaky. Yeah, even those worst case scenarios are really, honestly, not that bad. I've never heard of anyone dying from a clean. I've heard of people getting some wrist pain. I've heard of some people, breaking the wrist or something. Worst case scenario. People sometimes will hurt the quad muscle if the bar lands on it. I've heard of people catching in a full squat, strain the ligaments in their knees. But that's like, if you're doing full lifts, you're using straps, you're like, I don't know. A lot of times it's guys that made a ton of progress really, really quickly, and kind of haven't gone through the ringer with that stuff. But yeah, so you use straps, you always miss in front. That's actually really insightful because I'm always looking at these high jumpers and I'm like, how pardon my language, how the fuck are they pulling 315 that well, and they weigh $130 and they're just they're ripping this weight off a hang, and I'm like, I couldn't hold on to the bar, and a lot of European high jumpers do it, and I'm like, my wrist would hurt so bad on the catch to do that, and I don't know if it's because I've always caught in a front squat and it'd be it's like a different type of catch. Is it a slightly different technique with the strap?
It absolutely is. Yeah. So couple things. I'll address the straps, and then I want to address the new lifter, and then I want to get back to your deadlift trap bar point.
Hex bar jump. Yeah.
Hex bar jump. Okay. So the thing about straps is there's a lot of stigma out there. And I don't know anyone who's hurt themselves with straps other than myself. And when I hurt myself, it was because I was attempting to do a full clean. And this is a common story you'll hear with inexperienced lifters doing full clean. And what happened is I'm doing 265 as a red shirt freshman or whatever I was. And I go down into the bottom, elbow hits knee,
breaks
goes
wrist.
Like this. That's what happens. So it's like when you get too far forward, your elbow hits your knee as you're doing a full
That's exactly what I've seen happen so many times. So if you're doing, that's the other thing I was going to say is if you're doing powers, there's probably way less risk for using straps, for a snatch or a clean. I've actually never seen anyone in a power with straps hurt themselves like that ever.
I mean, that's why, and that's why, in kind of a rebuttal to your this guy that likes the deadlifts and doesn't like the Olis. It's like if you simplify the movement to every possible degree, your athlete will likely not get hurt and will get more benefit from it. So there's a reason in which I do everything from the hang or from a high box. It's simple. There's no first pull. There's no second pull. There's just the third pull. And for those of you who have experience with Olympic lifting, the first pull is when it goes from the ground to the knee. The second pull is when, or some people don't believe in a third pull. I do because I like it.
Yeah,
second
I'm curious on how, I was going to say, we probably view this a little bit differently, but go ahead. Tell me what you were going to say on the second. What is the second pull to you?
Second pull is from knee to mid thigh. And
Okay.
that's where you're getting your hips under, you're getting into a more explosive position. And the third pull is leg drive, hip drive, pull, and catch.
Okay.
So
So
what I
I would
do,
say what's
mhm,
how I typically do it or explain it is first pull to above the knee, double knee bend, second pull, third pull is actually like the
mhm,
arm action. So your third pull is what I would call the second pull.
yeah,
And so it's like isolated to just the knees shifted underneath the bar, jumping as aggressively as possible, exploding through the
exactly.
floor, and getting underneath it. There's no setting yourself up. The only downside is that many times athletes, well, there's two downs. I like hangs. I do hangs a lot. One, because I can't really set myself up well in a power clean, so I do hang cleans a ton. In commercial gyms, it's annoying for me because if I drop the bar or I miss the weight, then I have to pick it up from the floor. And to do that, I can't get into step position in the first place because I don't have blocks or something else. Where if you can miss on the blocks, it's kind of like a lot more convenient. Like I love blocks because you can pull off the blocks, like you said, or you can just pick it up off the blocks, do the rep, and drop it back down onto the blocks. Like it's just easier and it's more focused on the power output. I still like the first pull. I see like some benefit to being coordinated enough to do it, but for the point that you're making of if your goal is just peak power and you want to simplify things, yeah,
That's
I don't
exactly.
think you can simplify that.
It's to the point where like I get a lot of negativity because I don't have Olympic lifter hip contact. So that's something that a lot of people, it's like it's like, and again, I'll try and simplify it. But like if you watch an Olympic lifter doing a clean, the bar seems to travel up their thighs, hits their hips, they push through, and then they drop under and catch it. Well, that's a very complex, difficult thing to do. And I clean once a week. And so I can't afford to lose. Yeah, that's another thing, John and Isaiah. A lot of people don't know this. I squat once a week and I only clean once a week, and yet I get
What?
stronger. I continually get stronger, and that's because of. And I'll quickly go on this while I have the topic open, and that's because of intent. So I have since my freshman year in 2015, I have switched from doing 2 to once a week, and I've put over 200 pounds on my clean. I've put 400 pounds on my safety squat, and I only squat once a week and I only clean once a week. And it comes down to intensity, because if you lift right, and of course, my opinion, no degree, if you lift correctly, what happens is your body is destroyed after a workout. Like not pain, but muscle fatigue is extreme. Like my coach Jerry Clayton, who loves Westside Barbell and got a lot of his stuff from Louis Simmons, and so like he just pioneered this with one of his friends like John Smith, and they looked at obviously the old Soviet texts like a lot of
That's
guys and try to
legendary.
interpret. What's up?
I said that's legendary.
Yeah,
John Smith, like throwing those names out there. People don't know those names, but in the track community, you're familiar. But anyways, go ahead, keep going with what you're
they're
saying.
they are absolute masters of turning high school kids, Americans, in 5 years to being like world class throwers. Like that's just how it goes. Oftentimes, like in the hammer throw, especially in the javelin, you get international kids coming in, and that's just what coaches do. But like as far as developing like Americans, because the hammer isn't thrown in high school, so
Yeah.
you have to take a kid and teach them the hammer and teach them to do it well. So Jerry got me from being like throwing the hammer from 1 year to being like a 6-time All-American, and I was a 3-time Big Ten champion, 3-time runner-up. And then this is like very quickly, and how he does that is with absolutely explosive intensity. So, like I squat once a week, right? But like when I do these workouts, I am lifting as heavy as I can, as fast as I can, every rep, every time.
You just
So,
made one of the best points that I tell people oftentimes about VBT and answered one of the questions I've always had for people that use VBT regularly. And that is this: if you use VBT, your intensity increases a lot, not a little bit, a lot.
yes,
And if that is the case, you're going to follow a traditional Charlie Francis setup, high-low, long conjugate sequence systems where you lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then you are going to be more fatigued. You're
yep,
going to, or like, if you did high intent on Monday, Wednesday, Friday like that, max intensity, you're going to blow yourself up with VBT because it is so freaking intense to move every single weight as fast as you possibly can, screaming, yelling as hard as you can, max intensity, pissed off at the weight. It will blow you up. And so I'm like, you can use VBT, yeah, but if you just haphazardly use it on every rep, every set of every high intensity day, pardon my language, you're gonna get fucked up. You're gonna get so fatigued. I don't know how you get out of that hole. And your answer is you lift less frequently. Like,
You lift twice a week. I do Tuesdays.
so you do that
Olympic
year
power.
round. Year round, you'll lift twice a week.
Yeah. Well, not year round. In season, I lift once a week.
Okay.
And
So
what
in
I do is
your
that
most heavy training cycles, you lift twice a week.
yes. So like those are the cycles in which, so my once a week are my maintenance. I'm maintaining, and I'm focusing on the event. I'm trying to throw farther. But in the fall, I do twice a week. I do Olympics on Tuesdays, and I do squats on Fridays. And the reason is Coach Clayton told us straight to our faces. He's like, you are not athletic enough or powerful enough. Nobody on the planet is, unless you are having a chemical assistance, and that's that's steroids or another stimulant like that. Unless you are taking steroids, your body cannot recover from how aggressively I want you to treat these squats. Like he said, so I Hatfield squat, I safety squat, and the reason I do that and I use the pins is because that if you do it right, it adds at minimum 200 pounds over your back squat. And it's all about tonnage. Like I want more tonnage on those days. And so if you do that workout right, you are toast. Like nervous system wise, you're gone. And it's to the point where I only do it once every other week because it takes you literally 10 days to recover from that single squat workout. You don't get any benefit out of doing it again.
That is your most intense stimulus that you do, is those squats, those hand supported, I guess back support, whatever what did you call them?
Hatfield, they're safety squats.
Hatfield,
there's a lot of different
safety squats, right? So you'll do that, okay, and so you'll lift twice a week. So you said you do a 12-week period. So you just finish. Typically, guys finish in the summer, right? You go through the fall, that 12-week period. So let's say September, October, November. That's your 12-week cycle. During that period of time, what's that?
And then I max. So I do 12 weeks of work, 2 weeks of max.
Right, and so then you go into December. You're getting ready for indoor. You go December, January, February, sometimes March through indoor, depending on how far you make it. Then you have like a revamp period, usually for a month or two, and then you're into or maybe a month. Then you're into outdoor through the summer, right? So
that's it exactly.
So then, as we're talking about this, those 2 times a week, those Tuesday, Friday sessions, you're building out. You're following the principles we talked about earlier. Volume starts high. That September comes down through November, still stays pretty high relative to the rest of the year. And then, intensity's climbing up across. Maybe you start at 5s, work your way down to singles by the end. And then, you max out. Then you go in and you're kind of in this maintenance phase where you just lift once a week through the indoor, and then probably do a little revamp for 1 month. And then again, maintenance. So that 1 day a week, you said you only do cleans once a week and you do squats once a week. So for your max CNS activity lifts, right, for that 4-week period of September through November, are you just blowing up volume for like just one lift, go in the weight room, clean for an hour and a half, leave? Squat 1 day a week, blow it up. Or are you doing accessory stuff? Are you doing other lifts? Like, is that it?
So that's the thing, right? I always tell people, I just lift twice a week, and they're like, "Wow, man, how do you get these results?" And I'm like, "Oh, it just works out." I lift for 3 to 3.5 hours on each of those days. So like I am in there a long time. I am destroying every muscle group that I come in to destroy. So I start out with a clean, because that's the most energy sucking event. It requires mental stimulation, it requires physical coordination. You want to start with it. You don't want to squat and clean, because that takes away. The squat is a very simple, it's basically you versus the bar, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. The clean is technical. Always start with your most technical movement, because that's going to be very difficult to come back from. So I clean in the fall specifically. I do a lot of 8s. I do a lot of 6s. I do a ton of reps, 5 sets always. But like when I'm getting into shape, I'll be doing 5 sets of 8 through September on the power clean.
That's working weight.
Yeah. So that would be like, I'll start at 135 and I'll work up to 315 for 8. And for those of you that don't know, 315 for 8 will burn 100, 150, 200 calories just that one set. Like, it's absurd.
That's in the clean. That's in your clean. You're doing that, or your squat?
Yeah, that's in my clean. Like that is
You're doing
my
8.
I would die. I would literally
it's
die.
conditioning. It is brutal. Like that's what I do. It's
Joe,
like,
this is some of the most insightful shit I've ever heard. It is so interesting to hear this.
Yeah. Sorry, dudes. My freaking robot vacuum is trying to interrupt us. So
I love that.
I'm gonna turn him upside down for now.
I love your cat just chilling in the background.
Yeah, dude. This guy's a good guy. He's a good dude.
So you do your 8s, you do your 5 sets of 8, you work up to 315 for all 5 sets of 8.
No, that's key. So I don't believe in excluding warm-up sets. So
okay.
I will.
Because those are your high
sets,
intent. Right.
Exactly. Like it's 3 warm-up sets effectively. 135, 225, like 45, and then I go 75 or 95, and then 95 or 315. Like that kind of thing. And the reason this is so difficult is because you're strapped to the bar, and that's why I love straps. You can't do this without straps because you need grip strength. If you hook grip, especially, it deteriorates as you move. But with a strap, your grip will be the last thing that fails. Your legs will fail, everything will fail, but the straps will keep you locked into that bar. So on my last set, on my 5th set, I'm doing 8, 315. I'll go 1, drop it to the hips, 2, drop it to the hips, 3, and I'll do that for 8. And what that really does is that just destroys your nervous system because you're doing a pretty high intensity weight. For me at that time, that's 75, 80% of my 80% of my max. I'm trying for 8. That is destroying. So it's like you come back on a Friday and you're squatting. I do 10s in the fall. So I do 5 sets of 10 safety squat, and I'll work up to, I think the most I've done is around 500 pounds. 500 pounds for 10. And
holy shit.
And you are pushing the speed. You are not allowing yourself to go below 0.5. I never allow myself to go below 0.5. So this is a quick aside, but there's the velocity training zones, and they call it absolute strength is 0.5 and below on mean velocity. And that's when you're like, if you're 0.5 and below, you're approaching the most weight you can possibly do. I like to live in the zone in the fall called accelerative strength. Accelerative strength is 0.5 to 0.75. This is 80% of your max. This is heavy weight, and but you're moving it kind of fast. Like you're not absolute strength here, and that's where I like to.
So like all 12 weeks, your squats, you want 0.5 to 0.8, basically.
Exactly, and just for the top set. So like what happens is like I'll start at 225 in the stage squat, and I'll move them at like 1.1. I'll be bouncing around, and then I'll work down. I'll be dropping typically 0.1 every 100 pounds or 90 pounds.
That's crazy.
So that's what you want to do. So and then this enables you because by like shocking your system and destroying your nervous system on a weekly basis, but only 2 days a week, it enables you to really trust these numbers because the numbers know like the speed velocities know more than you do. It's like I don't care how I'm feeling. I'm probably going to produce pretty good numbers on any given day because I've trained myself to do this.
Right. And you've given yourself the rest. You've given yourself the time off. You know what frequencies you can hit within a time span, within a month, where you can bounce back. Super interesting. Like your approach is like, we're going to nuke ourselves twice a week instead of like taking machine gun, bullets to the chest 3 days a week. Like you're like, I'm going to blow myself up. So I have another question about this, not to interrupt, because I want to hear how you progress through the year. So you're looking at those peak powers in the fall when you're looking at peak bar speeds. How are you in the fall? Do you have any goals you try to hit for peak bar speeds, or is it just like move the weight as fast as possible on these, like work at 80%? What you get is what you get.
Yeah, it's like I'm always trying. I don't care what part of the year it is. I'm always trying to speed PR because that's what you have to do.
Right.
Like you won't probably, if you're doing this right. When you want to be, you're feeling your best. You're going to be setting your PRs if you're doing it right. But you got to try every single time to do it. That comes back to that intensity. So what I more focus on is that end goal. It's like every time I get into the weight room, I'm thinking I got 9 weeks till max. How am I going to set myself up to have a day that I want to have? And so it's like that's just how it goes. Sometimes you're like it's not a linear progress. Progress is never linear. It's skips and stutters and hopefully grow.
Isaiah's in the valley right now with his vertical. We hit 50.5 in the summer, did a bunch of elastic work, did a bunch of speed work, did a bunch of power work, and then hit the valley. And he's like, all right, now I'm down to 48, but we're accumulating a bunch more volume right now. And he's still probably jumping 48, and it's fine. I'm like, I like literally have an idea where I'm going to be like, if your vertical is 2 to 3 inches lower while you're training hard, you're doing it right. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. That means you're fatigued. You're getting adaptation. If you're not seeing a decrement, then you're probably just max prepared all the time, which is not necessarily what you want. And so, yeah, like those dips and stuff like that. So I don't know what you were saying, what your point was going to be. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. That is that. I mean, like, it's interesting to see the comparisons in the sport, because like that's exactly what you want. It's like when you max, when you want it, like you're not going to be able to be a 50+ inch vertical jumper every day of the week. You physically can't. You might not even be able to be a 50+ inch vertical jumper,
once
more
a year.
than 2 months out of the year. Wait, what's up?
We were going to say once a year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and it's like that's how it goes. So it's like me, for example, I cannot box power clean 405 right now. Can't do it, because like I prepped for 12 weeks to be where I wanted to be right then. And then you start to go, wait, you cannot be in that, as you said, max prepared mindset for a longer than a couple weeks, maybe a month out of the year. So when I'm training for track and field, it's like the number I want to hit is like 255 feet in the hammer. Now I'm going to be that guy for a month, if I'm lucky, to be able to hit those numbers. And then I'm going to be back down to 245, 240, because that's an elite, incredible performance that you can't reproduce. You have to be physically on the nose every part of your body to be able to do that. And as a result, like you have to time it, you have to prep for it to like give yourself every opportunity when you want it. So like in the fall, I'm not throwing very far because my focus is on the weight room. But it's like I'm still trying to perform and improve so that come spring, summer, I am throwing far. And it's like you build on that, you build on that, you build on that. So
do you ever so this is really like insightful. I think the jump training world, like dunking world, has a little bit different of a mindset because it comes from basketball, and basketball is like you show up every day and you just try to be the best player like every single day. But it's very different from actually hitting like elite performance. Like what is the human body capable of that it can only do once a year? And I'm curious, like it's been tough for me kind of like accepting that the best days ever only happen a couple times a year. And I see it with a lot of the athletes that we train too. Like they'll start jumping lower and they just get like depressed and they're like, oh, like, what's going on and all that stuff. Did you ever struggle with that, with not like being at peak performance all the time? Or is it something that you're just kind of just like used to at this point?
Listen, we're human. Of course, there is the mental difficulty that comes with that. And again, gym wear plug. And again, like that's why velocity-based training is so excellent, because you might not physically be able to lift as heavy weights, but you can always improve on something. Like I might come home and I'll like talk to my wife and be like, I had a great day. I PR'd for speed at 220, like 230, something like that. And it's just like, yes, overall my numbers weren't better and I'm weaker than I was weaker, but like you might find one asset to improve on. And that's why you can always check, because it's like if you're lifting the same things every day, it gets very boring. It gets very, very boring. And so this adds an element of excitement and fun to it, where you can always be improving on something. You might improve on bar height. You might improve on how straight your bar path is. Maybe you constantly curve a little at the end, because that's another thing it can text. It can tell you if you're moving out or in, and you can increase technical proficiency. In the throws, especially, like I said, I throw varying implements. So like, yes, my 16, my comp ball, the one that matters, isn't going very far right now, but I PR'd with my 18, I PR'd with my 20, or maybe not even PR'd, because again, like you're probably throwing those farthest when you're feeling good in that spring, summer, glorious time, but maybe you threw significantly farther than last November. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So say, because like always, like that's also the beauty. You can't really compare yourself to your best. You got to compare yourself to your best at the month you're in. So it's like, am I the best Joe in November? Am I the best Joe in February right now? Let's look at past Joe. Let's see what his numbers were. Let's see how far he was throwing. And what you're going to see is, you're like, if you're following like a program, a dedicated program, you're like, oh, wow, I'm not throwing like what I was throwing in the spring, but I'm kicking this guy's butt in the fall,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that's how you get through it. It's like, it's unrealistic to be like every day you're gonna get better, but it is
Yeah.
very realistic to look at seasons past and be like, yes, I am better than that guy. And if you continually be better than that guy in past seasons, you will continually get better.
Right.
That's a really good point. John, I don't know if you remember last year at this point I was hurt.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Actually, that
yeah.
is weird conceptually. Yeah, I think it's easy to look because, like, for us, we don't necessarily have like an annual plan. Isaiah's is almost similar to fighting, like MMA, where it's like it's not fall to fall. It's you have a big competition coming up. You got to train for it. Oh, you don't know till you know. You might know a month out. You might know 4 weeks out. You generally have an idea when stuff's going to happen, but you really don't know. Like All-Star Weekend was, Isaiah found that out, a long time ago, and we were like, okay, cool. But there was some other random event that popped up in October, and then another random event that popped up in late October, and then another random event that popped up when he moved in December. And it's like, you can't really perfectly plan for this stuff. Like, we knew All-Star Weekend was this week, but like randomly across the way, we have all these other random competitions pop up where it's like, you got to have some level of readiness. You have to. So that's a little bit different. And we've had the luxury in past years of like, Isaiah was like, I'm just not going to do that right now. I'm going to just train. And we don't, like I said, have to follow an annual plan. So if we want to we don't have to do 12 weeks of strength work. We want to do 20 weeks, we could, of loading, because we don't have an indoor season or that really matters. If we want to do a full year, we could. Like, you kind of have the luxury of picking and choosing, because it's not like you got to score points or you got to like whatever weird system IAAF uses for like deciding what rank you are or whatever. It just doesn't work that way. And so it's a little bit different in that sense. But what I like to do is compare training cycle to training cycle. Like right now, Isaiah's repeating a training cycle that he did last summer, and we want to see how he responds to it, because we changed our belief on some different stuff related to jumping and contraction type, because throwing is seemingly very concentric dominant, right? Seemingly. Jumping is seemingly very stretch shortening cycle. I mean, not that throwing isn't, but in a way, like, you're not launching yourself into the circle, like you are spinning and you're accelerating the whole time, but you really don't decelerate and then reaccelerate, I don't think, right? Or is it like,
it's interesting because like we consider ourselves to be the so my coach Clayton, I'll just do this quickly, he coached the power events. And John, you're familiar with the power events, but Isaiah, like the power events are the jumping and the throwing events, and oftentimes these events have so many similarities.
they do.
And it's because it's like if you look at our jumpers at Michigan, they're doing our training. They're just doing it lighter because they're physically like they're half our weight, right? But the intensity is the same. And it's like they will squat, they will clean, they will snatch, they will bench, they will do it all, and we will do all of those things as well. It's just there's a few specificities that change, but like the power event, the stretch shortening cycle is huge. It's like both of these fields want fast and violent movements, and they want them to get faster and more violent, because that's how you get more explosive. And so like the throwing motion is incredibly violent, and that's why I clean the way I clean, like, because there's no, like when I talk about that hip contact, there's no hip contact in the throw. But what happens instead is like you drive into the ground just the same way you drive into a clean, and then you bring the ball past you. And so if you look at the throwing motion of an elite hammer thrower, it's very similar to the explosive movement in the snatch or a clean.
Like on the actual throw, I know, like in the hammer, you like come down and you whip through every time. It's almost like swinging a golf club, like on the each hit that you have. And then at the release, obviously, you're spinning super fast. There's a lot of timing and probably like a hit portion of it where you release and the ball goes flying. So it's interesting in that sense, I guess, where sometimes like jumping and sprinting research you look at is like, oh, the importance of eccentric force generation. What's happening when you're yielding, and how much are you preloading, and how does that preload let you generate more force? It's why jumpers can't do shit off. High jumpers can't do shit off standing vert, but give them a 10-step approach and they jump 50 inches. And so it's like we used to think, I think especially for 2-foot jumping, that that's the same for 2-foot jumping, and what we're finding is it's just generally not the same. And there's and even for 1-foot jumping, maybe it's not the same, but for 2-foot jumping, if you do a lot of elastic work, you do a lot of plyos, you do a lot of that stuff, it's going to hurt you. We've generally found that to be true. And maybe it's a specificity thing where you're fatiguing those systems, or maybe it's just that it's not as specific as we thought. And, depth jumps just aren't the same as 2-foot approach jumping. Like there's no research on spike jumps. There's like one research paper and it's not great. There's not a lot of research on approach 2-foot jumping. There's a lot of research on high jump. There's a lot of research on throwing. There's a lot of research on weightlifting, squatting, but there's not a lot of research on standing vertical. There's a ton, but you add a run in and you throw like a asymmetric kind of plant, where 1 foot kicks out and you displace 10 feet into your plant foot, and then your block foot hits and there's a like right then left and you pop off the ground, the way Ja Morant does or someone else. Like it's just different. It's different than anything else, but it is honestly most similar to throwing. And that is what people don't realize, because for example, in shot, you have your block foot hits and you launch the ball and you generate a shit ton of torque and you have a lot of momentum there. You're changing the direction very quickly. Jumping off 2 feet is very similar. Like you're generating a ton of force through your plant foot, and then you have a block and you pop off the ground vertically. Instead of moving an implement, you're moving your body, but it's the way that you generate force and being big and strong is still true. Not big necessarily, but very, very powerful. And so, when we talk about throwing and the similarities, like a lot of people don't realize that, but they're super similar. And that's why I was like, oh, this dude's a freak. He's a thrower. Perfect. I want to talk to him. And he uses VBT. He's smart. Oh, incredible. No one does this. And so like when you're, I guess like coming back to kind of all this stuff. So you mentioned how you go through the fall and you hit all of, your goals are 0.5 to 0.8 for mean. You're squatting. Are you doing accessory work after the cleans and after the squats?
Yes, 100%. So I will clean for around 45 minutes to an hour, and then I will pull for around 30 minutes. And
when you say pull, what do you mean? Like deadlift?
I do overloaded hang high pulls. So like in the same exact way I do my cleans, but I don't catch them. So say I end a workout at 365, I'll pull 405, and like, to kind of expose your body to be like, this is what it feels like to pull this weight, and then
you're still trying to hit peak power output, like still using BBT.
Oh yeah, 100%. I never beat those power numbers. I do that.
And you're using BBT for all this stuff at this point in max intent?
No, not for this. So specifically, I think VBT is wonderful for full body movements. I think that's when it really shines. I just don't think when you're using a cable machine, I don't really think cable machines. I think that when you're doing isolated work, I think it's more focused on the movement and the technique. But that's just me. So I'll do.
Are you still pulling at max intent for this stuff? Or are you still going max intent on these?
No, these are. Usually it's like I guess I've spent all my max intent coins and money at this point in the workout. So now it's like I call them my auxiliary work, and it's just
So this is like put the hay in the barn, do the work, not necessarily trying to. Maybe you'll go heavy, maybe you won't, but it's like you got to do the work. Maybe all of it's 70-80%.
Like,
but I'm saying like 70-80%, like maybe 85. You're not like, but I'm gonna try to go 90% on step ups today and like crush this like as fast as I can. You're just like, all right, I got to do 5 sets of 8 reps at 80% of my previous max. Like I'm just gonna not go through the motions, but you're not popping your foot through the ground, popping the weight off your back, like drilling the rep. It's like, okay, I'm gonna just move this weight, whatever's programmed. Probably what most people work, Yeah, it's the way most other people lift.
Yeah, that's what I descend from Olympus to lift with everyone else,
with the humans, the narps.
Yeah. So yeah, like I do a couple things, and then I always end each session with circuit training, with timed rest. Typically, I'll do like an upper body circuit, which is like 4 different exercises completed quickly, one after another, 45 seconds to a minute rest. Do that 3 times, gets the heart rate going, gets some movement. And then I'll do a mini leg circuit, which is the same idea: lunges, jumping, squatting. And I always, I know they're not as accurate, but I like to do my jumping on a force mat. So it'll tell you how long it thinks you were in the air. You guys know what I'm talking about? Not one of
the just jump mats. That'll just tell you flight times, and then use flight times to measure your vertical, and you can just get like kind of more power endurance volume. Probably like if you're doing 30 seconds of knee tuck jumps on it, and you're like, I'm gonna try to get all these knee tuck jumps at 25 inches for 30 seconds, and then you just try to push yourself. But the purpose of that for you is it's auxiliary work. It hits other small areas you probably missed maybe in the workout, but you also want to get some check the box of endurance, power endurance or something, build some cardiorespiratory fitness, maybe for recovery purposes or whatever, build up soft tissue, whatever it may be that you're trying to achieve with that stuff. But so you'll finish with that on your pull days. And then on your lower body days, like your squat day, how do those days look? Is it pretty much like max out the squat and then you have like what do you do after your squat, I guess is a good.
After I squat every other week, I do pin squats, half rack squats, I call them.
So you'll do that after the deep squats, after the
exactly.
Okay. Oh, we have a minute and a half left. No, Joe, we'll have to have you back on. But in a minute and a half, what do you do after your squats?
So I'll do my pin squats, and then like basically after all that compression, you got to decompress. I'll do like glute and ham, like these kind of things. I'll do lunges, and then I'll end with some more circuit training. I think circuit training when you're at your fourth quarter mentality is huge because it's like you are tired, you have just squatted, you have been doing this for 2.5 hours. Well, guess what? You're doing some timed movements as fast as you can, and that like helps with like mental fatigue and all that.
Right. So how many sets are you working at that like same thing, like 3 to 5 sets on those other accessory auxiliary lifts?
Yeah,
like
exactly. Typically 4 sets. Typically 4.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's super insightful. Well, I know we have like 30 seconds left. If you guys have listened to this full podcast, you have learned probably more from this than any other podcast we've done because we really dove into X's and O's, which we usually don't do. So if you're a programming nerd and you want to know why we do the things we do, specifically with THP, why I tell you the things I tell you, this is why. Joe has done a great job by putting an objective number to it and explaining why. I think having you on again would be really cool in the summer whenever you're competing, if you have time, and we can go back over things. You'd be like, I'm throwing the 60 as far as possible now. But yeah, we'll cut it there. Thanks for listening, guys. As always, follow THPStrength.
Real quick, Joe, where can everybody find you?
I'm on Instagram with my egotistical name of Joe Strong 96. So feel free to give me a follow. I'll be posting VBT content once a week for the rest of the year. So
perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks for that idea.
Awesome.
For sure.
Well, as always, guys, like, comment, subscribe, give Joe a follow.